This is AFL.com.au and a special report. Good afternoon, Matt Thompson at the AFL Media Hub at Docklands in Melbourne. We're going to take you now to Sydney, where there is breaking news. Israel Folau quitting the code of AFL, quitting the Greater Western Sydney Giants. A news conference just getting underway. Let's listen in to Giants coach Kevin Sheedy speaking now.
Look, it's disappointing from a point of view of losing a player that job not done really. Probably coming back into this pre-season, we felt that after his last game, we had a really one of those games that left you hanging and say, well, this guy could be something in our AFL team. And of course, probably blindsided myself and everyone yesterday. I have to say that. But look, he's such an honest person. He's come along and told the truth about his feeling for what he feels is the game that he would play, and it's obviously rugby and NRL, either one of those codes. He's got the talent to do either of them. But you would rather a person tell you the facts so we can move on to club.
You know, I guess, the last 2 years I've really enjoyed my experience at the Giants, and again, I made a lot of good friends. All my teammates were wonderful the whole time. Again, I just, in the end, I think the passion wasn't quite there, and I think in the end, I kind of, if I was staying, I guess I was kind of cheating myself. So.
All right, we're going to leave the news conference there from Sydney. That was raw pictures coming in from Greater Western Sydney Giants headquarters. The news here on AFL.com.au that Israel Folau has departed the football club and won't be seeing out his contract. Matt Thompson's my name. This is AFL.com.au breaking news, a special report. We are live on the air right now, and I'm going to bring in my colleague from the AFL.com.au newsroom, senior journalist Ashley Brown. Ashley, good afternoon to you. This is an enormous story.
Matt, good afternoon. Feeling a bit like Sheeds, blindsided by it all. We just did not see this one coming. Perhaps the clue was yesterday when the Giants announced Dean Brogan, their ruckman, was going to play another season. Perhaps reading between the lines, and we saw from the media conference that Folau told the club yesterday, so perhaps that's the first sign of it. But what it means and what it throws forward now, it's full of intrigue.
We're going to talk about it for the next few minutes. You can also tweet us here at the AFL. We'd love to hear what you think about this at afl.com.au. Tweet us using the Twitter handle @AFL, and those messages will come to us direct as we continue this conversation. So, as you mentioned, Sheedy said he was blindsided. Israel Folau said that he really didn't quite have the passion for the game. I guess the question that everybody is going to be asking right now is, was this a failure? I'll give you my take just very quickly. I think on one front, obviously, it didn't work. It didn't work in terms of his football prowess. There's no doubt about that, having played just 13 games. But it did work on the publicity front. And even today, right now, this is an enormous story in Sydney, and he's going to give the code of AFL a lot more publicity again. But this will be the last grab of publicity, I guess, Ash.
That's right. He brought people in that part of Sydney, in fact all of Sydney, really know that Giants is the team Folau plays for. So I guess from the publicity point of view, that worked from the AFL. And look, the stats don't lie. He didn't really back it up with his performances on the field. A couple of scratchy games here or there. You'd perhaps give a pass mark to maybe 2 or 3 of the 13 games he played. A couple of games he looked really out of his depth. Our colleague James Dampney wrote a piece after one of his games during the year saying that the experiment wasn't working, that Folau looked disinterested and had no feel and flair for the game. And I think in hindsight we would all say now that James had it 100% right. So well done, James. It really was a battle as it went along, and I would think, and we will hear obviously the great disappointment coming out of the Giants camp, Matt, but I would say deep down, and particularly the incoming coach Leon Cameron in 2014, there'd be a slight element of relief, I think, that the experiment's over. They can get on now with winning games, developing their footy side and getting the best 22 on the paddock.
Relief from a football perspective, Ash, but what about from the code's perspective? Is this an embarrassing day for the AFL? Is this an admission of defeat?
I think it's probably not the best day for the AFL. I mean, how it'll be received upstairs at the AFL will be interesting. They put a lot of time and emotional energy and money, obviously, into the Folau, into getting to play. There's that vision of him, of the clandestine tryout in a back paddock somewhere in the west of Sydney where they first started. So a lot's gone into it, Matt, but I think They'll be disappointed, but I think they'll look at, they'll turn and they'll justify it from a marketing point of view that it probably worked.
Yeah, as we continue this conversation, we'll talk more about that tryout and the Israel Folau journey. You're watching breaking news coverage right now on afl.com.au. The news, if you're just joining us, is that Israel Folau has quit the code of AFL. There is speculation he is going to return to rugby league. Has been linked to the Parramatta Eels, where his younger brother, plays in the Toyota Cup competition. But as yet, and as you heard from that news conference, Israel Folau not confirming that. Let's just talk about his AFL career. Obviously, it was just the one season, 13 games, 6.2 disposals, 1.4 tackles, 5 hit-outs, and as we know, just the 2 goals over the course of his career. It's not the most stellar AFL career, it's fair to say.
No, just a career. In fact, if you go back, the best footage of Folau, he played a NAB Cup game against Hawthorn at Aurora Stadium in the pre-season, where he took in the second half, I think it was in the third quarter, he took 2 or 3 really good contested marks. And that was the first time we thought, hang on, he's showing a bit of promise here against a pretty good side, but it never really clicked for him after that. He played well against Adelaide. He kicked a goal in that game, took a couple of big grabs. They were really competitive, as they were for most of the season. Met for a half against the Crows that day at Amy Stadium. Did well. Sheed said his best game was his last game, where they lost by about 4 goals to North Melbourne. Played well that day. He was part of the historic first win when they beat the Gold Coast at Manuka. But look, not one of the great footy careers, and not a lot of footy people would turn around and say that they really got a player when they got Folau. Unlike Carmichael Hunt, who will forever be compared to, and Hunt really looks like he's getting the game. Different sort of players, obviously, as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We'd love your feedback on this breaking news at AFL on Twitter. Let's just talk a bit more about the Israel Folau journey. Obviously, a highly accomplished rugby league player, but it was back in April 2010 when Israel Folau was put to the test. And this is vision from the AFL media documentary, which went to air a little earlier this year on Channel 7, From Boys to Giants. And we can see these pictures in a park hidden away in Sydney where Israel was put to the test. It's a remarkable story. I mean, it worked with Carmichael Hunt, didn't it? And people are saying Carmichael Hunt is making progress. It hasn't worked with Israel Folau.
No, and the difference, as Israel pointed out in his media conference, that Carmichael Hunt played some schoolboy footy, so he had a bit of a feel for the game. He played when he was 14 or 15, and as the journalist Kevin Sheedy asked Folau at the media conference, would it have helped if he'd played the game as a schoolboy, and Folau said it would have helped. So Hunt had that up his sleeve, that he played footy as a kid, and different sort of, as more as a midfielder, going to where the ball is, better feel for the game. We all fell in love with the idea of Folau playing AFL football, Maddie, when some of those magic touchline grabs in the NRL, a couple of games for the Storm and also for Queensland, doing some unbelievable stuff, catching those high balls. And that's what made you think it could work in the AFL. But I don't think he had enough of a feel for the game in other areas. They tried him in his development year as a defender. They tried him as a forward. Eventually they moved him forward. They thought playing him as a defender, he'd learn the game. It didn't work, even with the great Steve Silvani tutoring him, who's now the list manager of the Giants. So they moved him forward, a bit more of a feel for the game, ran him through the ruck. But really, when you consider they've got Brogan as playing off another year in the ruck. They've got absolute gun forwards in Jeremy Cameron and Jonathan Patton. You wouldn't pick him in your best 22 now at any stage for the Giants. You start to think, well, is it from a football point of view, going to that second year, is it worth it? The Giants need to start settling their team down. New coach coming in, Leon Cameron. He's not going to want to play Folau much this year if he's not going to be in the club's long-term plans.
I think Dermot Brereton was involved in the process along the journey as well with helping out Israel Folau. Just recapping, if you're just joining us from Israel Folau's news conference, he fronted the cameras in Sydney just a short time ago, just minutes ago really, confirming the news that he is quitting AFL. He said that it was definitely not a mistake. He also said that it wasn't a waste of time and that he has learned a lot about himself over the past couple of years, including one season in the AFL and, of course, before that, learning the game with the Giants as they were formed into a team. One other thing to talk about, Ash, before we wrap up our breaking news coverage, and that is the Kurt Tippett scenario, which we are continuing to follow very closely here on afl.com.au. Now, of course, Kurt Tippett remains technically on the Adelaide Crows list at the moment. He won't be playing there next year. We know that he wants to move back to Sydney. The Swans are obviously a better option in terms of potentially winning a premiership in the near future, but could the Giants somehow land him?
Well, again, we had Dave Matthews, the CEO of the Giants, coming out and saying, if we can afford him, we will pick him. Now, the salary situation with Folau is complicated because a big chunk of it was a marketing agreement outside the cap, but some of it fell inside the cap. So straight away, there's some money from the salary cap for Folau that they can put towards Tippett. It helps them afford it helps the Giants afford Tippett now because they've got a bit more money to play with. They've still got to do their sums, obviously, and talk to the AFL about what they can afford. But it makes it really intriguing now that whether Tippett will go. It would now appear to be a genuine race, a genuine battle now between the Swans and the Giants to get the services for Tippett next year. So Tippett, he's looking at beachfront property, I believe, in Sydney at some stage. He might now be might have to look a bit closer to the Parramatta River because there is a chance he'll be playing for the Giants next year. As
we go, Ash, just very quickly, tomorrow's headlines, in particular here on AFL.com.au, you can make a prediction. What are the headlines right around Australia going to be screaming about this story?
The fallout, or the fallout.
All right, the fallout. Thank you, Ash. Thank you very, very much. Our senior reporter here at AFL.com.au, Ashley Brown, with us. That concludes our breaking news coverage. Just repeating, Israel Folau has quit the code of AFL and is set to return to rugby league. That certainly is the speculation. I'm Matt Thompson, reporting live from AFL.com.au headquarters here in Melbourne.